Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at the COFAS premises in Ljubljana Center. My name is Yuri Giacomelli. I've got this pleasure to introduce the second CBA PowerTalk, which is going to tackle several issues related to the expanding regulatory framework in the European Union and how to seize the opportunities that are coming up and approaching. This is what we are going to do. We are going to introduce the topic a little bit, and then we are going to focus on non-financial reporting and the consequences this will bring to the relationships between companies, large companies, small companies, startups, and as well as the corporate sector in the relationship with the financial intermediaries, banks, insurance companies, investors at large. Before we start, I would like to invite Mr. Sergei Simoniti, the CEO of COFAS Slovenia, who is at the same time overseeing also other markets in the Adriatic region, to join me here and to introduce this meeting. Please, Sergei Simoniti.
Hvala, Yuri. Thank you, Yuri. Dobar dan, dragi gosti, dragi poslovni partnerji. Pozdrav v slovenščini, but I will continue in English because it's an English-speaking event. So basically the topics of our today's session is how to succeed in new environment of sustainable regulatory requirements. We at COFAS, we are, let's say, the premier export trade credit insurer. We are the database for the business information about the payment discipline and so on. So we are highly involved in international trade. We are fully committed to environmental issues. That's why we are starting these Power Talks with Circular Business Academy. Yuri, thank you for this opportunity from my side. And we are having our keynote speaker from Vienna, which Yuri will introduce a little bit later. From my side, a few opening remarks. We are seeing now a surge of various regulatory requirements in respect of environment. I was in my former life a regulator on another side. But what I think is the important message is that regulation is not a burden. I mean, technically it is a burden, but it has some purpose. We need to two steps back and maybe take a stoic attitude like Marcus Aurelius and ask ourselves what is the purpose, what is the essence of it, why we are doing it. And in general, all the regulation, in particular EU regulation, is basically to improve the lives of the citizens of the European Union, be it on competition side, be it in this case on the environmental side. As Yuri said, we as the financial intermediaries, we play a very significant role in it. We are somehow unofficially first line of defense in this respect. We cannot finance, we cannot support, we cannot insure our clients, or at particular terms, if the clients do not meet certain, or that's the future at least, certain regulatory requirements. So our role will be crucial here. And this is also important for our clients, our partners, to understand that we wish, and we see ourselves in supporting them. Last but not least, our corporate saying is COFAS for trade, because basically we facilitate international trade because we believe trade is good for business and for communities at large. I would say that I see this saying, corporate saying, as slightly modified. COFAS for sustainable trade. Yuri, now to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergei Simoniti, CEO of COFAS Slovenia. Now let me start by saying, yes, the financial sector has been undertaking an increasingly important role in transiting towards a more sustainable economic model, not just of the European Union, but we are going to focus on the European Union and the legislative framework arises from the measures and regulations at the EU level. We are not alone in that. We are in a competitive environment between different parts of the world, striving to get there as fast as possible to react on the endangering climate and resource crisis, and of course to create new opportunities. That's why I would like to invite you to make a step back chronologically and have a look at where all this is coming from. Certainly the fundamental framework provided by the European Commission in its previous mandate is, as we all know, is the European Green Deal, which has been brought in 2020, and it is nothing more than the framework aiming at the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which had been adopted 5 years before by the United Nations. As we know, we are talking about 17 Sustainable Development Goals, each of them having clear, or 10, each of them having about 10 clear and time-confined targets, altogether to bring the world into a state of sustainability by the end of this decade. The European Green Deal has been further reinforced by a law which actually urges us to get there as fast as possible, being one of the most developed economies globally, and an act and supported by the backup measures known as Fit for 55 plus makes it possible to reduce the CO2 emissions by the end of this decade by 55%, which can keep us within the boundaries of the targets of the, as we all know, the Paris Agreement, the key target, keeping the global temperature rise on average under 2%, what could still keep our planet livable under the conditions of life of our civilization as we know it today. This has set the ground for further legislative changes, which have been coming up with some accelerating pace in the European Union, and as much as it is important to change, let's say, the active side of the balance sheet of all the companies, households, families, and so on, it is also important to act on the passive side, on the sources, right, on the financing. So that's why a high-level group for sustainable finance supporting the European Commission in bringing up the corresponding legislation has designed the so-called EU taxonomy. So it is the passive side of this whole framework. And deriving from the taxonomy, which is some kind of an agreement, some kind of a, let's say, glossary of what should be considered green and what should not be considered green, of course, sets the ground for further decision making. We are addressing specifically here the non-financial reporting directive, and this year, at the beginning of this year, we have seen some further development in this direction with on the corporate sustainability reporting, with the corporate sustainability reporting directive brought at the beginning of this year, which will be accompanied by the European non-financial reporting standards. They have been provided in a form of a draft, as we know, and they are coming up now through this year. So this new framework is being now completed, and it will determine some further obligations and some new opportunities which will then arise from this framework, not only for large listed companies, but also for other, even public SMEs, of course aiming to provide a more transparent culture related to sustainability issues, being environmentally or socially related. So with Karin Huberheim, who is our esteemed CBA faculty member and a senior expert on non-financial reporting topics. We are going to now go a little bit deeper into the consequences. And as I said, what we really like to focus on is how these relationships among us in business are going to change. And because we know we are not going to get there into the more sustainable mode alone, we only can get there all together. This means that through our relationships, new opportunities will arise. And those who will be more flexible, those who will be able to predict this better, and who will also be able to relate to others in a more fruitful way, will certainly be able to seize more of this huge pile of opportunities that we are seeing coming up. Karin is with us. She's connected right now from Vienna. Let me briefly introduce her to you. Karin is not just our faculty member and being a leading expert on sustainable business innovation and stakeholder communication. For many years, she's also executive director of the Circular Economy Forum in Austria, which is a joint initiative for key players from business, science, design, policy makers, and the society at large. She's also a board member of the Global Compact Network, Austria, which promotes the dissemination of the SDGs among Austrian companies, and also the academic program director on sustainability and responsible management, circular economy, innovation, and sustainable finance at the University of Applied Sciences in Vienna. Welcome, Karin. I'm really glad that you could join us, and I invite you to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone from Vienna. I wish I could be in Ljubljana with you, but luckily we now have the benefits of digitization and virtual meetings. Sebastian, can I share my screen now? Yes, thank you very much. Let me start right into it, and I hope you can see the presentation. Great. I think we will have some time for Q&As in the end, but for everyone who's in the chat, please also put your questions already in the chat while I'm speaking about the future of finance, which is now, and as Yuri Giacomelli has introduced me so kindly, about the new role for the finance sector that the Sustainable Finance Agenda creates now. The key question here is in all of the activities that the EU has been implementing already and will be implementing in the future is how can we make the finance industry part of the solution rather than part of the problem? Because in the regard of the development, the sustainable development of the planet, so far the finance industry has not been part of the solution. And this is something that has been very much in the focus of all the European experts who, as Yuri already mentioned, have been working in the finance task force. The problem that we are facing, or the problems or the risks that we are facing, are manifold. And our inaction now will only lead to higher costs later, and we should always be aware of that. The World Economic Forum, in its 2020-2023 survey, has mapped short-term risks and long-term risks, but among all of them are actually no economic risks. As much as we pay so much tribute to economics, the risks that we are facing are mainly in environmental or societal fields, and not in economics. I think this is remarkable, and we should be aware of it, because every risk that hits at one point, sooner or later, society and nature will affect economy. So we should be very much aware that the risks of failing in climate change mitigation and climate change adoption is a rather long-term perspective, definitely, but already now we are facing natural disasters, extreme weather events, which of course have a big impact on population, on people, on citizens. And this is something that we should keep in mind when we talk about risks and also financial risks. So to note that the longer we wait, the more expensive everything becomes. Franz Timmermans, in his keynote in the Future of Finance Forum on May 9th, said that definitely finance must change. And yes, our system has been too short-terminist for too long. It has not been a bad system. It has worked for European, especially for the Western world and for the European states very well. Our level of wealth, of material wealth is rather high compared to other states in the world. But he put it out. It's time to shake things up. It's time to invest in long-term health, not only in short-term profits. And he wants us to be very clear. And I think this is also a no-brainer. There are no profits to be had on a dying planet, because the planet actually is everything. It's all the value that we have and all the value that we source from. What is underlying under the concept that is underlying the sustainable finance agenda, the European agenda, is the concept of the 5 capitals. I don't know if someone of you has come across it. It has been developed around the millennium in 2005 by Jonathan Porritt, then a British politician who was in the cabinet of the then government of Gordon Brown in UK. And this concept of capitals that we source from, that we build upon, is the underlying concept under the sustainable finance agenda. There are 5 capitals that we know of. We have financial capital, which is a representative of natural, human, social, or manufactured capitals, like all the shares, the bonds, the banknotes. We have manufactured capital, which are all the material goods, the fixed assets, the tools, the machines, the buildings, everything you can touch, you can buy, everything that is made by us. We have social capital, families, communities, businesses, trade unions, schools, voluntary organizations, partnerships, everything that brings people together, where ideas are growing, where motivation is given, where productivity is given. And we have learned in the past 2 years of the pandemic how important social capital is for people. And for all of us, for each of us, social capital has really been diminished in 2020 and 21, and we are still rebuilding and fighting the issues, or struggling with some of the issues that have decreased social capital that we had before. Social capital, again, is fed by human and intellectual capital. People's health, the knowledge, the skills, the motivations, all these things that are needed for productive work, needed to build social capital, needed to build manufactured capital, which is then represented by financial capital. And last but not least, there is natural capital, which is the basis of life itself. Our life on this planet as a species, but also other species' life. This is extremely crucial to keep this value. All the air, the water, the soil, the biostock, the livestock, renewable, non-renewable materials. This is what we live from. This is what we all need. Without it, there will be no human life on this planet. This is what we source from, because all of the manufactured capital actually is also coming from natural capital. So natural capital is something that we have to revalue, and honestly starting to put a price tag on it, and not just the price tag of extraction, but the price tag of regenerating it. Because currently we are not regenerating any of those capitals. We are living basically of the interest rates, not of the interest rates, but of the capital. So this is something that for people in the finance industry or for CEOs is a very relatable concept, because if you put a price tag on it, if you put numbers on it, you will see that natural capital, human intellectual capital, and social capital are the ones that we cannot do without. Manufactured capital, we will start thinking about it. There are new concepts like regenerative economics, circular economy, that we will rethink this capital, and definitely financial capital. If there was one capital you could remove from this concept, which we could still live without, it would be financial capital. So we always need to be clear about that. It's a representative, and it represents our values that we build upon. I'm not going to dive very deeply into the Sustainable Finance Action Plan. I guess you're all aware of it, and there are plenty of seminars who take a look into it. The most important things to point out is that capital markets and sustainability taxonomy are at the core of this action plan, and the goal and the outcomes shall be to reorient capital flows towards more or even sustainable investments, to mainstream sustainability into risk management. Talking about the capitals, natural capitals, social capitals, we need to mainstream these capitals into all our risk assessments, and to foster transparency and long-termism in economy and in our thinking. These three goals are crucial, and all of the plans, all of the measures that are taken, from taxonomy to standards and labels to sustainable projects, financial, to incorporating it into financial advice, developing benchmarks, mainstreaming it in the risk management, all the measurements that need to be taken there, and that are where we develop standards, regulation. All of this is like a big puzzle, a piece. All of them are pieces of the puzzle, and they will come together sooner or later. We do not have all the pieces of the puzzles yet sorted out, and there are definitely some questions. But this is going to be a full picture to transform the way we live in our societies. The action plan on sustainable finance has the financial market participants and the large companies and the listed companies in one system. They now need to both of them from two sides work with the EU taxonomy system, with the categorization of sustainable activities. And their relationship, therefore, will definitely change. This is going to be a game changer in the role of financial actors, as it is a game changer, of course, for corporations, for businesses, due to the very much enhanced transparency, which, of course, needs different actions, because if we would provide transparency on what is happening now, we would not see much of all the requested information that are now coming with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive or the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. So this is a game changer in many ways, not only for the financial sector, but also for the corporate sector. And definitely also for the investors who have now the possibility to have a system at hand that shows them, or that they can use to categorize sustainability actions of businesses. Are they truly sustainable, or are they just eligible, or are they just transitionary? So this is something that from January 2022 we are now aware of the first two categories, climate mitigation and climate adaptation. There has been a lot of struggle with the I can say this from at least from the Austrian banks, but also internationally. So there is a lot of uproar, I can say, because it's very new, definitely. But do not take too much time with those two categories, because in 2023 we will see implemented, or because by now they are already out. The proposal is out, and it will be, it's if it goes through Parliament, then by the end of 2023, we expect circularity, pollution, biodiversity, and water come into the assessments of sustainable activities. And this will, again, we will not need, we cannot take years of time to implement it. It needs to be a bit faster, because we have spent a lot of time now with climate change and mitigation, and this was only the beginning. So what did the EU do? Actually, they did something that was extremely smart. By putting the taxonomy out together with the sustainable finance agenda and the SFRD, they let the fox guard the hen house. Because so far, the finance sector has not been much involved into the sustainable development movement. They have been rather, the financial sector has been rather detached from all of it and had their own agenda. So this is changing now, and it's changing worldwide, actually. It's not just changing in Europe. And yes, you could see this as a disruption of your business, or you could see this as a landscape of opportunities for new business. Not only new businesses out in the real life economy, but also for new business of in the financial sector, because it is going to change your role deeply. How does it change it? Let's first look into what also Yuri kindly mentioned before. The taxonomy categories support finance. They are not a disruption, or you should not see them as a disruption. You should see them as a support in the taxation of the truly sustainable actions. There has been so much greenwashing around, not only in funds, but also in businesses, but also in the finance sector. And there are a couple of law cases already out. So not everything is meant devious, but some of them just happened because sustainable really means something. It's not just some marketing action. It should be welcomed as a support for informed decisions on investment allocation in sustainable business actions or sustainable business activities. According to Bloomberg, there are trillions out there globally wandering around looking for ESG or sustainable investment or sustainable business activities. Currently, there are not enough businesses that comply with ESG indicators or with the taxonomy. So this is really something where business now needs to really get going much quicker. And please never forget, nature is changing society. If climate changes nature, it will change the way we live on this planet. And social needs that occur will change your business. They will change all kinds of businesses, but it will also change your business. So we should be aware of this. Therefore, it's crucial to act proactively and strategic, and not to get stuck in reacting when you're lagging behind all these developments. Start by questioning and discussing your role. Support your people and your clients in the transition. These are the most crucial first steps into this new role. ESG investments actually globally have been growing over the past years, have been the one segment that has been consistently growing. Why? Because they are extremely attractive for investors. And why is that? Because they provide enhanced transparency and a future-oriented reporting, which is much different from the historic reporting that we have known now for the past 40 years. We all base our decisions for the future on the history of on the numbers from history, from past year, in a very dynamic field, very globally dynamic, complex, insecure environment, it is extremely important to be able to look into the future and have a plan for several scenarios, because as we have learned, things can happen very quickly and very, very surprising, very, very can come out of the blue. And it's important for investors to know that if they allocate money into an investment, that this business, that this activity is made for the future, and made for a future that we all want, and that 193 states have committed to in the SDGs, in the Sustainable Development Goals pursue, but also 195 states have signed the Treaty of the Paris Agreement. So yes, they want, and each state has their own way to go. So there is no one solution for all. Everyone will do this on their own. But we have all agreed that we want to have a low carbon future, because we need to sustain a good way of life on this planet, which would not be possible if we don't. So this new role could be advisory for future fit businesses. It could be enhanced, it definitely will enhance customer engagement. There could be a risk premium for brown or gray investments, or for laggards, and definitely higher credit rates. You will be putting on a certain kind of investments, because this is not a law that everyone has to be green. It just means that green is going to be the most favorable investment, but there will be others. So consider what to do with them, and how you would like to evaluate risks, or to assess their risks, or put a price tag on those risks of not going into that future or lagging behind. So the to-dos for being part of the solution that I can recommend: understand climate, to be able to assess financial business risks due to climate change. There is law and regulation on it. We have water risks, biodiversity risks, soil, human rights, human health, biophysical impacts like flooding, droughts, storms, heavy rainfall, that will heavily and majorly hit economy and the economic outputs of companies of all kinds of fields. Understand the monetary value of natural and social capital. The taxonomy that we see now is the E of ESG, the environmental taxonomy. There is currently work done on a social taxonomy, and we will also see a governance taxonomy come into place in the next years. So social taxonomy is going to be the next. Why? Because we need to manage social capital as well as natural capital. Understand innovation and new circular business models. Regenerative business models are the way into the future. We cannot do without them. You need to understand it. Improve the governance of businesses through ESG advisory. The G, the governance, is actually at the core. Without the matching governance, the matching structures for who is taking decisions based on what are the principles of those decisions, the transparency, the stakeholder engagement that is needed. Without that, the E and the S actually will not be properly applied. And to my and many of my colleagues' opinion, it should actually be GES. Because to put the G at the end is not the best idea. And really important, stop thinking and acting in silos within the organization and outside the organization. We need to cross-cut. This is all a cross-cutting matter, and everyone needs to be involved in his part and in his department or her department. And definitely learn that new economic thinking the same way like you learned and adapted to digitization. It's a cross-cutting matter concerning all departments. No one would have said, digitalization, that's not for me. I just stick with paper work and with my typewriter. No one would have done that, because once it has started, it just started, and you needed to go along to stay in business. Consider sustainability the same. It is just the same thing as digitization. We will not be able to do without it, and we are not going into the future, the next years, without putting sustainability at the core of our thinking. One more call from me: learn circular economy. It's the economy of the future. Those new business models for circularity of resources, water, energy, materials, are the tool for the sustainable economy, and go beyond waste management and recycling. Waste management and recycling alone are not going to do the job of sustainability or taking economy into sustainability. As long as we have a linear system, a linear economic system of taking resources, producing them, using them, and then discarding them, throwing them away, making it trash, this is not going to be sustainable. We can only do things here and there a little better. The model of circularity, a business model for circularity, is the only lever that we currently really can put in place and have to turn economy around into a sustainable, regenerative one. So it's crucial that you know about this system. Start investing in the green transition. We cannot buy our way to safety in the climate and biodiversity crisis. We tried to buy our way out of the pandemic. We will still have debts for the next generations globally, but climate and biodiversity crisis is going to cost too much. We will not be able to pay for it. The finance industry will not be able to adjust their portfolios and then claw back some of the losses. This is too big. So with the European Green Deal, the European states are now under a legal obligation to reduce their emissions. This is the overarching goal, being climate neutral until 2050. And the legislation in Europe is aligned with the EU climate targets. So don't think that this will go away. Start today. It's really time now also to align our financial system. This is the way to go, and it needs to be aligned to these targets, to the climate targets as well. Last but not least, show us the money. Let us see where the money goes. The sustainable finance directive is definitely made for showing private investors that it pays off to invest in the energy transition, to invest in circular economy activities. Let us see where big finance invests in. And we need the finance sector to contribute to the better for all while doing their business, not at the side, while doing their business. This is what you can do the best. This is what we need. This is what society needs. And with this, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Karin Hubertheim. This was really very condensed and overwhelming lecture. And now we can take a few questions. I hope we have some questions from the audience. Do we? Sebastian, is there a question that is burning right now? Or anybody else in the room? Of course, Karin, I have some questions for you. But
I can start, no problem.
Please, Sergei Simonin.
Karin, thank you very much. I would just like now with my question to put all of this into a context. What you're saying is basically we are completely changing the paradigm of our business, and you're looking at it through us as the financial intermediaries or financial institutions. However, most of the listeners of this PowerTalk are our clients. And my question to you, of course you don't know the details, but what will be the change in our relationship as insurers or banks or whatever kind of providing financial assistance, and our clients who are actually doing the business on the ground, being pharma companies, being construction companies, being production companies, being retailers, or whatever. What is going to change for us and for them, and what is going to be, how this focus is going to shift?
Well, the first thing is you need to ask for more questions, different questions. Thank you very much for the question. I can see you sitting down. You will need to start asking different questions, a wider perspective of questions. It's not any longer about the financial and technical aspects of a business. You will need to know what their decarbonization plan is for the future, what their plans are in regard to regenerating the natural capital that they source from, the social capital that they source from. And this is something that insurance companies or banks never had to ask before. You will need, and then once you get the questions or the answers to the questions, you will need to know how to assess them, how to taxation. What is it a good question? Is it a good answer? Is this a good reliable decarbonization plan for example? Because actually, who of us is an energy expert? It's for me, even as a sustainability consultant, it's not easy to say if a cement or a pharmaceutical company now decarbonizes until 2040 and puts out a plan. Is this really possible? So you will definitely also need to rely on certificates, on labels, on third-party audits, because you cannot do everything yourself. So you need to cooperate for this.
The dialogue with our clients will completely change. We are not going to look at the margins. We are not going to look at the price increases. We are not going to look, I mean, of course we are going to look at this as well, but we are not going to the price of raw materials and so on, but we are also going to see the business model from environmental perspective.
Exactly. You will need to be able to see, to assess a business model, a new transformative business model. This is also not something that has been within the scope of an insurance company or of a financial, in the financial industry, to assess that kind of new business model, because we have been used to assess business plans of linear companies.
I would, Karin, if you allow me, you had one of the last slides, you exposed the need to go into the circular economy. At the beginning, I mentioned that, and you also underlined that, yes, the European Green Deal is a law. Actually, it is a law which specifically requires us to meet the decrease of carbon emissions by 2030 by 55%, in order to get to 2050 to net zero, as we like to say. It has been also, thanks to the energy crisis, there has been a lot of emphasis on how to do it through the transition to renewable energy sources. But I would like to go to the other side of the coin as well, which is related to the resource crisis, not just those used to produce energy. You've been one of the delegates at the recent Global Circular Economy Forum in Helsinki. And you've announced that delegated acts for the EU taxonomy related to the circularity are coming up. Do you see companies embracing a circular economy fast enough, and how can you predict further development now in the next months? Because this is obviously coming up as a hot topic.
It is coming up, and I can see the interest is very, very big. We have really growing interest. But what I see is also in businesses that there is a gap, a knowledge gap, a know-how gap, or a to-do gap in the transition to transform from, if you build a startup with a circular business model, that's fine. You can do it, and then you need to see how you can scale it. But in an existing business, to transform from a linear system to a circular business model, there are several strategies how you can do this. And what I can see is now venture capital going into startups. I can see pilot projects in businesses where they run a pilot at the site, trying to see how this works and how this could go with some of the products or one product. The full transformation from linear to circular, I have not seen yet in Austria, but also actually I have to say not globally on a full scale, which is perfectly normal, because this is not a transition that we can do or that business can do within a year or two. This is something that we will see coming over the next years until at least 2030. I'm very convinced that by then we will see companies doing that. And why? Also here, it's a resource issue. If resources get scarce or expensive, it will be reconsidered, as we have seen it now in the energy sector. And definitely critical raw minerals, rare earths are certainly for the electronic industry and for all our renewable energy activities, we will need them. This is going to be critical. And the other point is that I can see is CO2. To come down with your, to be able to lower or decrease the emissions, the CO2 emissions, you need to put in secondary material into the production of many productivity activities. So in manufacturing, I can already see that companies are starting with creating positions for secondary material procurement, for example, because the markets need to be built up for that. There are no markets yet, or small markets, and we need big companies. Producing companies need volume, and this is something that in the logistics area we will see growing, and we already can see it.
Thank you so much for this comprehensive explanation. It is definitely a topic to observe through the next months. Thank you again for this exhaustive lecture, and I'm waving to Vienna, hopefully seeing you soon in one of our next endeavors. This leads us to the conclusions, and I'm handing it back over to Sergei Simoniti, please.
Yeah, so thank you, dear listeners, for listening to us. Thank you, Karen, for this. Just my final thoughts. I really think what is at the core of it is, when we are talking about regulation, when we are talking about new challenges, new business models, it's more or less about tackling the emerging risks, however we are going to call them. And as Karen mentioned at the beginning of her lecture, she said that none of the risks which are listed are actually economic risks, and this is something I'm repeating now for a year, so I apologize to anybody who already heard it. I'm for 25 years in the insurance industry, and it's all about risk. And in 2008 we have had the financial crisis. I was talking with central bankers. I remember the discussion with the head of supervision at the Central Bank of Netherlands, and she said, we saw it coming. We knew it will happen. We just didn't know when and to what amount, and especially we didn't know how to react. Then in 2020 we have had the pandemics coming, and all of the major insurance companies, they have a pandemic scenario. It's something which is obvious. So basically all of the insurance industry knows, but sooner or later some sort of pandemic will happen. And it happened, and basically the world reacted quite reasonably. And in 2022 we have a full-scale war in Europe between two sovereign countries, which nobody predicted apart from CIA, who does not really have a good track record since weapons of mass destruction. So my point is that, first of all, the risks are more and more unpredictable. Secondly, the last two, COVID and the invasion of Ukraine, which are huge risks for economies and societies at large, are not economic. In parallel to these events, what is going on? The environmental changes are enormous. For me, it's fascinating that flood for normal household in some parts of Western Europe and in UK are not insurable risks anymore, which is traditionally the most traditional risk to be insured. So this is happening right now. That's why I believe all the endeavors in this respect are really important. Now, the second point, what I really thought is important take away from Karin's presentation, is that G is really important in ESG. E and S are the goals, but G is the way how to achieve the goals. And basically, it's the process. It's about the process and how to manage it. So I think this is an important takeaway, which I was never thinking in these terms. So thank you, Karin, for that. And on the, let's say a bit more, not to be so serious, on the funny side, in respect of G, please take a look at YouTube on the how to say, promotional video for Vilnius. And last but not least, I was present 5 years ago at the adoption of one how to say, annual report of an insurance company in Slovenia. And it had one side and one page and a half about what the company is doing for the environment. It said we bought 2 bicycles so that our employees do not use the cars, and we installed the trash bins, which are basically separating the trash. And everybody was happy, including the internal auditor, and saying that this is really an example of it. So 5 years fast forward, we are discussing basically about the passive side of the balance sheet, about the active side of the balance sheet. I had a discussion with some people at the Insurance Europe, so basically the Association of Insurance Associations, so a trade association. And everybody was basically saying on a larger scale, yes, we will buy 100 bicycles so that our employees will bike to the office. But when somebody is saying, okay, are you prepared to insure I don't know, a coal mine or not? Or would you be prepared to surcharge something in insuring the coal mine not being so competitive? Everybody's saying, come on, are you crazy? And then I heard a comment which was really nice from the head of the Insurance Association of Norway. And the person said, I think it's now really time to rethink, do we want to be on the right side of the history? I think this is the main takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sergej Simoniti. Thank you very much to COFAS Slovenia. It's been a pleasure being here among you, and you've been a wonderful audience. You all employees of COFAS, all our friends who have been following us online, COFAS clients, circular expert practitioners, and others interested in this topic. I'm happy to announce that we are going to have next Power Talks through this year, and the next one is coming up still in summertime. Thank you for your attention, and hope to see you soon.